protesters also took to the streets of Tokyo.
We are concerned
to voice their
about the
opposition
obstruction
earlier
of our
this year.
nominees.
Do you think
it's more likely we will see more of those events?
Bengals, you're damn right you take them seriously. Now, this was a game.
The Biden administration at this point has a smaller percentage of nominees confirmed than his recent predecessors. What do you make of this? Who's to blame? I mean, is this the fault of the Senate, or is this in part because you have been focused on the COVID response and the Build Back Better agenda? And is there a concern that this will affect government at this point?
We are concerned about the obstruction of our nominees, and while we have made progress over the course of the last several months, back to the transition even of putting forward qualified nominees to serve in key and vital positions across government, there have been unprecedented delays, obstruction, holds on qualified individuals from Republicans in the Senate. What is also true, if you look historically, and we can get you some numbers on this after the briefing to give this to you in more data specifics, is that many of our nominees, a huge number of our nominees, pass with overwhelming majorities of Democrats and Republicans. They can be voted through by unanimous consent. You don't need to use all of the hours on the floor to get it done. Yet, there has been time after time obstruction that has prevented qualified nominees from being in vital positions, whether it's in the national security roles, in the Defense Department, the State Department, where we've seen ambassadors held for weeks and months at times, or even our economic nominees who are unquestionably qualified but have been unable to move forward and serve in these positions. So I would say that the blame is clear. It is frustrating. It is something that we wish would move forward more quickly, and there is historical precedent, of course, of moving these forward through a faster.
All right, Bob, you remember when Ken Anderson was the quarterback for the Bengals. Is it time to take this team seriously? That's another point.
Augustana, Ken Anderson.
Right.
Okay. The Bengals, you're damn right you take them seriously. Now, this was a game, though, that they needed to prove to the world how good they could be, because among their previous conquests were the Jaguars and the Lions. So you almost don't count them in your mind, even though they count them on the record books. Okay, they have got, in addition to the fact that Burrow is clearly a great young star, the most breathtaking new pass receiver of the last several years. I mean, this kid is frightening. Remember he was dropping passes in exhibition? What was that all about?
Yeah.
Was he just teasing people? Jamar Chase?
Rope-a-dope.
Anyway, you have to like the Bengals. Just remember last year, he wasn't there. Burrow was hurt. And now he's here, and you can see what
Japan's Princess Mako gave up her title and married her college sweetheart, Kei Komuro, on Tuesday. The couple forewent the usual pomp that makes a royal wedding, and instead had an official submit paperwork to a local office in the morning. Mako also refused to receive a one-off payment of about $1.3 million, typically made to princesses when they marry. The understated wedding follows a 4-year engagement beset by scandal, delay, and mental anguish. News in 2017 of the couple's plan to marry was initially cheered by the country. But things soon turned sour as tabloids reported on a money scandal involving Komuro's mother. In an unusually frank joint news conference with her new husband, Mako said incorrect news reports had caused her great sadness, stress, and fear. She was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder earlier this year.
I was terrified and sad when false information was covered by the media as if it's the truth and spread to become an unfounded story. I am appreciative to those who continue to believe in Kei, even in difficult situations.
On Tuesday, protesters also took to the streets of Tokyo to voice their opposition to the marriage. They accused the couple of forcing it through without giving the public an explanation. Mako and her new husband will live in New York after she applies for the first passport of her life.
Looking at the way the platform is moderated today, do you think unless there is change, do you think it makes it more likely that we will see events like the insurrection in Washington on the 6th of January this year, more violent acts that have been driven by Facebook systems? Do you think it's more likely we will see more of those events as things stand today?
I have no doubt that the events we're seeing around the world, things like Myanmar and Ethiopia, those are the opening chapters, because engagement-based ranking does two things. One, it prioritizes and amplifies divisive, polarizing, extreme content, and two, it concentrates it. And so if Facebook comes back and says, only a tiny sliver of content on our platform is hate, or only a tiny sliver is violence, one, they can't detect it very well, so I don't know if I trust those numbers. But two, it gets hyper-concentrated in, 5% of the population. And you only need 3% of the population on the streets to have a revolution. And that's dangerous.
I want to ask you a bit about that hyper-concentration,
Sure.
and particularly an area that you worked on in particular, and that's Facebook groups. I remember being told several years ago by a Facebook executive that the only way you could drive content through the platform was advertising. I think we can see that is not true, and groups are increasingly used to shape that experience. We talk a lot about the impact of algorithmic-based recommendation tools like Newsfeed. To what extent do you think groups are shaping the experience for many people on Facebook?
Groups play a huge and critical role in driving the experience on Facebook. When I worked on civic misinformation, this is based on recollection, I don't have a document, but I believe it was something like 60% of the content in the newsfeed was from groups. I think a thing that's important for this group to know is that Facebook has been trying to extend the number of sessions, get you to consume longer sessions, more content. And the only way they can do that is by multiplying the content that already exists on the platform. And the way they do that is with things like groups and reshares. So if I put one post into a 500,000 person group, that can go out to 500,000 people. And when combined with engagement-based ranking, that group might produce 500, 1,000 pieces of content a day, but only 3 get delivered. And if your algorithm is biased towards extreme, polarizing, divisive content, it's like viral variants. Those giant groups are producing lots and lots of pieces of content, and only the ones most likely to spread are the ones that go out.
It was reported, I think, last year by the Wall Street Journal that 60% of people that joined Facebook groups that shared extremist content and promoted extremist content did so at Facebook's active recommendation. So this is clearly something Facebook is researching. What action is Facebook taking about groups that share extremist content?